delighted to invite Matthew Cruz. He's Head of Business Intelligence and Public Relations at Home Solar Energy, and it's into the world of alternative energies here on the ATTC 2023 platform. Matthew, it's over to you.
Everyone, I'm happy to be here. My name is Matthew Cruz, and just to give a brief introduction to you to why I'm talking about solar today and also about what skills are needed in the solar sector, I'll just give a brief introduction about myself so you can understand who am I to be talking to you about this. So I started my journey actually studying at a technical college in Cape Town called Onamolan, and I learned the electrical curriculum up till the level of NQH level 3, and also wrote my test on NQH level 3, but I didn't go further with the electrical curriculum through the Technicons. I then went and studied engineering at UCT. And following that, I got to work at Eskom for 11 years. I got a bursary from them, thankfully. And through working for Eskom, I got to understand the current state of the energy sector and the future state of the energy sector. So I was there for 11 years, and the last 2.5 years at Eskom, in my capacity as a management consultant, I advised the board and C-suite of Eskom directly about the current state of the energy sector and the future state of the energy sector. I also wrote my MBA dissertation at the time on it, which was titled Eskom, Too Big to Fail or Necessitated Change. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing the forced change of the next step or the next phase of electricity, and Eskom itself kind of unbundling, which is news we got today of Eskom transmission unbundling from generation and distribution. So the change is happening right now, and we're in real time seeing the shift of the current state of the energy sector of Eskom's monopoly to then the new format of the energy sector, which is used in all developed countries in the world, of an unbundled state of Eskom, and then IPPs, independent power producers, providing power to the grid in the same way that Eskom's providing power, so bidding to put power onto the grid, and hopefully overall resulting in an overall reduction in the cost of electricity. But this state is going to take a long time to get towards, so it's between 5 to 8 years to get to the next state. And until then, we are unfortunately going to have load shedding doubling over the next 5 years. So just to talk a little bit about that, following working for Eskom and talking about the energy sector with them, I then joined a company called Home Energy, and this is who I'm representing today. And we are working in the solar space, and we provide the solutions for load shedding for both residential customers and C&I customers, commercial and industrial customers, and agricultural. So although we're not working on the national level of providing power to the grid as an independent power producer, we're working more on the bottom up, on going to each individual house and doing a solar installation there and business, and through that then addressing the load shedding issue through doing solar installations. So in that capacity, I'll be talking to you today about solar, but I also, in my private capacity, operate as an energy expert, and I'm on the TV news, radio, once a week, roughly, to talk about all aspects of the energy sector, and this is giving me deep insights into where things are going. And so for that foundation, I can share with you some information that although we hear from Pravin Gordhan and we hear from Cyril Ramaphosa that load shedding will be a thing of the past in 12 months to 18 months, which he mentioned in his address last year in July, and was also mentioned in 2019, in 2017, and 2015. This is unfortunately not going to be the case. We're not going to have load shedding reducing or going down to zero in the next 18 months. We're actually going to see load shedding doubling over the next 5 years. And unfortunately, this is the case mainly because we see a lack of large-scale generation capacity funded by government coming onto the grid. There's more a call from government to the private sector to produce and install generation, and by that trying to get out of the energy crisis that we're in of having a deficit and not enough energy to provide enough electricity to the grids, and as a result we have load shedding. So taking all of that into account, the private sector that I represent myself in our interactions with the presidency is a bit slow to act, mainly because we have a lack of a framework in place for understanding what is our sales that we're going to get for the electricity that we provide to the grid. So we don't know what the price of electricity is when we provide power to the grid from 2 years onwards, because NERSA determines the price of electricity every 2 years. So this is our laying the groundwork. So load shedding is going to be doubling over the next 5 years. What is the solution? We firmly believe that the solution is localized solar and battery installations. And I can go into great details into why this is the solution, but let's go into why is it the solution for you as a homeowner or a business owner. So it's understood we can no longer rely on Eskom for stable electricity, and also the electricity price increases are going up year on year. And so a solution is needed. Kathy, you mentioned previously generators, and we can talk a little bit about that. That has previously been the go-to for most homeowners and business owners, of getting a small generator to cover the critical hours of 1 or 2 hours during the day that there's no electricity. However, as we're seeing now, with stage 6 and stage 8 happening, we are having 12 to 16 hours of load shedding per day. And as a business, it's untenable to be running a diesel generator to cover 12 hours during the day of load shedding, and it's too expensive. So we're seeing a big shift towards solar energy. And to talk about the economics of solar energy and why it makes sense, and also why I believe it's going to be the biggest booming sector for the next 15 years in South Africa, is because right now the investment decision is very positive for solar. What do I mean by that? Let's go into specifics of an example of a house. Let's take a 3-bedroom house that's got 4 occupants, and I'm going to specify for this house a medium-sized system of a 5-kilowatt system. And this is now talking about the amount of solar power that can be produced from the sun by solar panels sitting on the roof that is then stored in a battery and also coordinated by an inverter to then provide electricity to the household. If we look at a 5-kilowatt system for a house, the cost can range anywhere between 120,000 Rand to 160,000 Rand with financing options. And that cost for the system will be paid back to you within 5 years of you getting the system in terms of the electricity that you're saving, because you'll be taking care of about 80 to 90% of your house's needs for electricity. The reason why it's not 100% is because it is recommended to keep a lifeline to Eskom to charge your batteries when there's been cloud cover for 3 weeks, for example, or when you have not been able to recharge your battery fully during the day because you've been using electricity. So we do recommend a lifeline to then also power things like your stove, which is very difficult to put onto a battery installation. To have a battery power stove, your battery will be done very quickly. So moving along quickly, we have this 5-year return on investment on a system that actually lasts 12 to 15 years. So to talk about why the system lasts 12 to 15 years that you install, your solar panels have a lifespan of about 20 years and have a warranty of 20 years. So if they break before their warranty is up, you can get them replaced, and you can have them then replaced by the provider of the solar panels. Similarly with batteries and inverters, we're seeing now 10 year of warranties being offered. And so, if the warranty is 10 years, then you can expect the battery then to last 12 to 15 years. So you have a system that lasts about 15 years that has paid back its worth in 5 years, but then gives you value then for the next 10 years after that. So it looks like whatever money you put into a system will be paid back 4 to 5 times in terms of your investments. And it's not necessary to have the 120,000 Rand with you. You can also get financing for the system. So that means that now we've got the 2 foundations. We've got Eskom, doubling load shedding. We've got a very sound financial decision in terms of solar panels, and my company, Home Energy, is there to satisfy the demand for solar in the country. But to focus on then the reason that we're going to have this being the biggest sector for students to get into for the next 15 years, it's going to be the biggest expanding sector in the country to the value of 1 trillion Rand for one product, which is the solar system. That is the current total addressable market valuation that we have determined given all of the rooftops in South Africa. So going from a very small base of less than 5% installed across the country to then 80% of homes and businesses having installations, there's going to be huge demand for solar installers and solar installer skills. And this is one of the big hindrances that we're seeing in the country, is the lack of skills that are needed. And to jump into what skills are needed. So what skills can be added to the electrical curriculum for future fit solar installers? And in order to prepare for the future, solar installers, it is essential to include these skills to prepare your students to be able to get into the sector. And I'm just going to lay out a lot of information now quickly, very shortly, that will help position what needs to be in place for a person to come out of studies and then plug straight into the solar sector. And get a job very easily. And then from that job, not only have a job where they're working, but then become a team lead, become potentially a company owner, and create generational wealth for themselves. So this is the unique opportunity that's before us in South Africa, as a sector that's going to expand up to 1 trillion rand, and there's lots of money available for everyone that gets involved. So I highly recommend that it's promoted within the electricity curriculum, that the content that's shared and discussed talks to the format and the setup of a solar system and how it works and how it's installed. And I'll now dive into some of the information. So it's recommended that an in-depth understanding of solar photovoltaic systems is included. And this is talking about the components with the batteries, the panels, and the inverter, and the principles of operation of solar panels, creating energy, getting stored, so created in DC energy. And that's very important because when I remember what I learned in the electricity curriculum, it was mostly alternating currents and heavy currents, and then some small microcurrents in the circuits. So the principles of operation of DC needs to be very clearly and well communicated. And one little example of that is if you have solar panels on a roof, 4 solar panels in a line, and one solar panel has a chimney that has shade going over it at the end. What will actually happen to that whole string is all of the panels will have the same efficiency and same production as that one solar panel because they are connected in a string DC. So that's important information to know when going and doing installations. How does DC work with solar panels? So proficiency in solar panel structuring, how to put the format onto the roof, the mounting, positioning, needs to be taken into account, and this can be taught through your curriculums. And also important things to think about for that is the tilt and the orientation and the shading analysis that can be done through open source software that can be learned by anyone. And if you have that on your CV or if you have that on your LinkedIn profile, thinking of some of the platforms that can be used in the curriculum, there's the kind of pay Open Solar is a free example of open source software that can be used, Open Solar. And then Helioscope is a paid for software that can be used both to design and create an engineering design of a solar system for a house or a business or even a farm. So having that as included in the curriculum is highly recommended. Then apart from that, there's knowledge of electrical wiring and connections specific to solar installations. So this is now talking about DC circuits. So including the safe practices for handling high voltage DC circuits. And DC, as some people may know, is actually more deadly than alternating current, which is what we get out of our circuits in our house, out of the plug in the wall. That's alternating current. It alternates between positive and negative, whereas DC is like what you get out of a battery in a car. It's just straight DC consistent power that is very dangerous if it's touched. So safety regarding how to assemble and handle DC circuits is very important. And then also expertise in system sizing, design and optimization to ensure maximum energy production and efficiency. Then also familiarity with the solar energy storage technologies. We exclusively use lithium-ion batteries, but lead-acid batteries can also be used, and gel batteries as well. And then also the energy management systems, which is primarily coordinated through the inverter, which is like the brain of the solar system. So you've got the panels that create the power from the solar energy. It's stored in the batteries, but it's stored going through the inverter, which is the brain that coordinates if the energy should be stored or if it should be used in the house, so that we can reduce whatever grid power is coming into the house to a minimum. So apart from that, there's also understanding of electrical codes and regulations. And an example of that in the standards example of that is you do need, if you're going to be an electrician, from the Department of Labor, you need to get a certification that you're an electrician. And that alone, could have you then become a solar installer, but it's highly recommended that you pair that with a solar PV green card course that you study to understand what is the things that are required for a good solar installation, a good quality solar installation. So it's not just being an electrician, but pairing that with training in the solar sphere is very important. And guidance on this is given by SAPVIA, so the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association, and that on their website you can see where you can get trained to become a solar installer as well. So, solar installer proficiency. So, to talk about the different vocational options within the solar sector, you've got the installer, and then you've got the solar energy salesperson, and then you've got the project manager, and we'll just go through some of the information regarding those. So in terms of proficiency with system installation, that's very important for solar installers themselves, and it's one of the easiest ways to enter the sector because there's not many skills that are required to join a solar installation team. It's highly recommended that the apprenticeship program is reintroduced in South Africa, and that apprenticeships are paid for by the government if possible. So it's like a little bit of a policy comment, but apprenticeships are one of the best ways to get into the sector by starting to do installations coming out of grade 11, which is what, it's all of it's required is a grade 11 pass, and then doing some studies in the electrical curriculum, and then you can join a solar installation team. So, what does that involve? It's proficiency in system installation, including the panel mounting, the wiring and equipment setup, and then knowledge of safety protocols, health and safety, hooking up at heights, wearing harnesses when you're working on high roofs. It's very dangerous there if you do slip and fall. And then also effective communication skills for working as part of a team, so you can work synergistically to get a solar installation installed quickly. Then solar sales representatives, people that make the sale of the solar system, highly recommended that what's taught is strong knowledge of solar technologies, and this is a common theme, and then also system configurations and financial incentives. So they can discuss with the potential clients, this is what it will cost, this is how much money you'll save, and this is financing options that are potentially available to you. So that comes paired with an excellent communication and negotiation skills to educate customers and also close sales. The next is vocational position to talk about is solar design engineer. This is now talking about who's going to be creating the designs of the bigger systems, like on a business roof or commercial industrial setup or agricultural. And that involves expertise in PV system design and software tools. So that's Helioscope, like I mentioned, or Open Solar, which is anyone can go there right now, type in Open Solar, and you can start learning, get a certification, and put that onto your CV, and you'll get snapped up by the industry immediately, almost, when you look up for a job. So then also understanding of electrical and structural engineering principles and familiarity with local building codes and regulations. So for example, the SANS codes needs to meet, South African National Standards, needs to be complied to when you're doing a solar installation, and you also need to get your codes complied to that are from the IEC as well. So this kind of knowledge, if they can start seeing this even in high school, or the electrical curriculum that I was part of in high school, that'd be great to see, because it then sets people up for actually getting a job after getting educated, which is like the primary goal, is setting people up for getting a very quick integration into the job market. So the last one then is the solar project manager, and this is kind of where you get to as a progression in your career, where you start managing then the solar installations that are happening through your business, and hopefully you can get to a place where you own the business. It's one of the simplest business models to go for, and this includes planning, scheduling, budgeting, and coordination of various stakeholders to get a lot of installations happening at once. And it also involves knowledge of construction and electrical systems to oversee successful project implementation. Great, so in terms of like my last minute, what should we be looking at in the construction industry and training? What information should be communicated? It's basically, to summarize, the formats of a solar system and the different components that are involved in it and how they all integrate together and work together. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for your time. Great, Kathy. Hello.
Sure. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think quite a lot actually coming out about something that people use in their homes, Matthew, and that some, of course, are considering actually using. Let's firstly look at the cost of all of this, right? You touched a bit on that cost, and you said load shedding is not only not going to get better, it's going to be double what it is right now. That's a scary thing to think about if all of that is going to happen in the next 5 years. So practically, for the teachers that are listening to the session, what do you think that means for them now and some of the learners in their classrooms?
Sure. So what does it mean for the teachers and some of the learners that load shedding will be doubling? Well, I would say do what you can to be able to still educate your students without the need for electricity. There is a program from the government for schools to get solar installations, but there are methods and things that can be done in order to be okay without electricity. So example, I live in a rental property myself. I'm not able to get a solar installation. So what I did to prepare for winter is I bought a whole bunch of warm clothes and a whole bunch of magneto lights that I could use then to read and study with. Also then switching to gas cooking and gas heating if possible. So yeah. Prepare for not having electricity for half of the day. I think that would be a wise thing to do.
Okay. There's a question here from Trevor Adams. Trevor wants to know, is there an official accredited curriculum offered at training institutions for solar installations and systems?
Yes, so I need to refer to my notes on this one.
Okay,
so if I can just
sure.
get the official name, because that's what he's asking for, the technical name. I did make some notes that I could share. So yeah, it's called the South African Qualification Authority, SAQA, under qualification ID 99447, and this was implemented in December 2016. And the name of it is the Solar Voltaic Service Technician NQF Level 5. So it is possible to get educated within official formats within the government in South Africa.
Some of the comments that people are making, just also in response to that question that I asked before you came on about whether people prefer solar or diesel. There are people who are saying that solar is expensive, particularly when it comes to the installation process. And I think you tried to explain in the beginning that, yes, it is expensive, but over the long term, it pays you back.
Yes. Yeah, and what's important to note there is that almost no one has 120,000 Rand just sitting around that they can invest in a system. And what's very nice to see from the banks is they're actually offering now monthly financing options. So an example is Nedbank with their asset-backed financing. You don't even have to own the house potentially or put it onto your bond, but they finance the actual assets very similar to a car and how a car is financed. And what's very interesting about that is when you have the financing charge coming to your bank accounts, you also at the same time have the savings from the electricity that you're no longer buying from Eskom as a saving. So you can actually get to the point from next year, even though this year's electricity prices were quite big, but from next year, you can actually get to the point where the payment to the funding is the same as the savings of electricity. So you actually have no difference happening to your monthly budget, but you're getting free electricity and you have no load shedding. That's very significant. And people, it would be wise to investigate and look at what options are out there and realize that you can actually have a situation where you're not losing any money, but you have no load shedding.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just about being willing to sort of sit with that pain a little bit before it gets better in terms of those payments. The last question to you, Matthew. How can you assist technical schools with solar power since load shedding affects the PAT progress?
Sure, that's a very good question. That talks in our policy in terms of the government policy. And there is plans initially to roll out for hospitals to get solar and battery installations.
Don't let the government hear you.
No, well, this is coming from the government. So I was at a conference an hour ago where the electricity minister was presenting, and he was saying basically, and NERSA as well, that the program is to roll out for hospitals first, and then after that it'll be schools. But unfortunately, that'll take roughly 2 to 3 years for the schools to then start getting the systems. And this is now off of the back of the energy crisis response plan and the state of emergency they went into, where permission was given to public entities to source their own electricity through either generators, which is not preferred, or solar, which is preferred.
All right. Matthew, thank you so much for that insightful talk that you have given us. We've certainly learned a lot more.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Matthew.